Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had someone say something in the comments yesterday and it made me start thinking because this is a topic that comes up from time to time. And they were like, hey, if anabolics were just legalized, they were legalized and, just treated like something like alcohol or whatever. That's what I define as legalization. Doesn't mean just everyone can walk in and buy them. Treat it like alcohol or cigarettes or whatever. Wouldn't that kind of be the death of the supplement industry? So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skill at my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. That's an interesting topic because I have to wonder about that. Because you'll see guys like Lobliner who will say, hey, he thinks they should be legalized, but his entire career, his lifelong career, has been based on supplement sales. His entire family income, and he makes really good money, obviously, but he supports his entire family off supplement sales. And yet even he says, hey, I think anabolics should be legalized. And he obviously uses and everything. So it kind of raises that question of why would anyone in the supplement industry want that to happen? Because some of us say, hey, we know supplements for the most part don't work. The data suggests they don't work. Again, and just common sense should suggest when you look at them really that anything people are getting out of 99% of them are placebo unless they're just a valuable food source. Again, protein, creatine, things like that, right? And we know that fake natties and drug use are used to sell supplements. So sometimes you have to say, well, wouldn't that kind of shoot the industry in the foot? And my answer is, I don't really know that it would. And the reason I say that is that when you look at the people who use heavy amounts of the stuff, there's a couple different schools of thought there, isn't there? We see different schools of thought among them. Yeah, you do have some of the guys who maybe go into pro bodybuilding level stuff, right? You have guys who use very, very large amounts of stuff who often don't use any supplements, and they think supplements are silly, and some of them who get their free supplements from companies end up selling them so they can buy more drugs. Why? Because they know that drugs are more effective. Dollar per dollar, they know that drugs are 100, if not 1,000 times more effective than supplements are, right? And because oftentimes these hardcore guys, their lifestyle revolves around how much can they afford. In other words, if $100 worth of supplements wasted on supplements every month could be spent $100 more into putting other stuff into their body, they'll opt for that $100 of other stuff to put into their body because they're not necessarily concerned with side effects, upper limits. They just know more is more, and a lot of them just use as much as they can possibly get their hands on. Look at what some of these guys occasionally admit to. It's mind-boggling amounts, right? And so to them, that's completely money wasted that they could just up the dose with. But what's interesting, when you go over to look at forums where people discuss their use, right? All these forums where all these meatheads discuss their use, how many of these guys, because they're already in an abuse mindset, actually abuse supplements too? In other words, the guy who's willing to put a gram or more, oftentimes, of gear into their body every week, which by today's standards is small. It used to be considered a large amount. These days, that's actually playing around. That's almost considered to be beginner's numbers, which is ridiculous. How many of those guys also had that mindset of just putting anything into their body that might work? Right? They'll say silly stuff like, well, drugs are good, but drugs plus supplements is even better. Even though supplements don't work, but that's the group of guys who are more likely to use 5 or 10 times the amount of the supplement that everyone else uses. So that's kind of the interesting point, is that mindset of people who do want to use large amounts of gear. Oftentimes, as long as their budget allows for it, and they'll find ways to buy stuff bulk, you'll see it frequently, they will be the first ones to be taking 30 grams of creatine a day. And you guys think I'm kidding, go check out various forums and boards and look at it. These guys oftentimes will take 30 grams of creatine a day. These are the guys who will take 20 grams of branched chain amino acids 5 times a day. Right? So these are the guys who will be taking up to 100 grams of branched chain amino acids or something crazy like that. Right? Or even 30 grams of it a day added in, plus 30 grams of creatine. These are the guys who will slam 30 grams of glutamine post-workout. Right? They'll drink 200 grams of whey protein in shake form. These are the guys who will also take a pre-workout and stack it with whatever drug they use pre-workout. Like I've seen guys who do this. Like I met one even over in the UK who, he would use test suspension pre-workout plus his pre-workout supplement. And they're also the ones who will take the double scoop of the pre-workout. So there's your interesting mindset, and it does make you have to wonder what would happen, because what ends up happening is that people who are willing to put anything into their body, large amounts of anything, they're also the same ones who are also willing to megadose supplements. So just because people are using things doesn't mean automatically that they won't use supplements also. So from that perspective, I think there would be no harm done, because the people who are oftentimes willing to do that will do the other. I think where the real thing would come in would be anyone who realizes the supplements don't work that well. When people realize, and that whole marketing arm is taken away, that the whole fake natty thing, fake natty's being used to sell supplements, it might hurt their advertising, right? It might hurt their advertising. And for anyone on a tighter budget, not people whose whole lifestyle revolves around this, because let's be realistic here. A lot of these guys, their lifestyle does revolve around it. Again, if they hang out on gear boards all day, they use large amounts of gear, this is very much an important part of their life. But for people who are more recreational lifters, if something happened to where anabolics were made legal and you could go in if you were 21 and have an ID, and they treated it like alcohol, and somebody could go and buy a bottle of testosterone and some Arimidex or something to control estrogen, and that became just a normal over-the-counter product for anyone of a certain age, just like we treat most other stuff. I mean, let's be realistic here. Alcohol, probably more dangerous than anabolics, right? It's over-the-counter for anyone over the 21, and some of the countries listening 18. Would people on a tighter budget realize that, hey, that would cost the same amount as buying half their supplements every month? I think that's where it would hurt the supplement industry. That's where I think it would hurt them. Yeah, because you'd have a lot of people like these guys who abuse gear who will abuse supplements also. But the recreational person who's just wanting to limit what they spend, they want to spend maybe $100 a month tops on stuff for their physique, for their training. If that became available, I think that's the guy who would stop buying supplements, because once they realize, hey, it's not even comparable. Maybe creatine or something. But when they realize it's not comparable, that's where they would lose their sales. So that would be the interesting dilemma the supplement companies and industry would face, isn't it? They'd have to deal with the fact that the hardcore guys who will do anything, the guys who Rich Piana marketed to, guys who will do anything to reach their goals, I think those guys would continue to buy supplements. And in fact, I think prices would come down on a lot of stuff, the other stuff that people are using, because quality would go up. They would be getting pharmaceutical stuff made, in the U.S. and whatever, at competitive rates. If it became just a normal business, it would bring actually the prices down. It would bring the safety would be better. People wouldn't need as much because it would be higher quality amounts. So overall, people would get better results. And I think what would end up happening is the guys who want to abuse large amounts of stuff, they're oftentimes stupid anyway. A lot of these meatheads are dumb. Honestly, if you can be convinced to take 50 grams of branched chain amino acids every day with 30 grams of creatine along with your gear, you're probably stupid. So those guys are still going to be the idiots who still fall for all the marketing, because they've been marketed to the point to where a lot of these guys actually think this stuff it helps them to megadose supplements while taking drugs and stuff. They believe that. I think those guys would continue to do so because the supplement industry has been so effective in its marketing that it's convinced all these morons that they need this stuff, that it actually works, that it actually helps. But I think they would lose money in the long term, I think, on the other end, because I think your more casual person who just buys a couple supplements every month doesn't want to spend a fortune on all this stuff, because that's the biggest chunk of their market. It really is. It's not that 5 to 10% of guys who buy a lot of supplements, right? It is that other 90+% of their customer base who only buy a couple of things every month. They might only spend $50 a month on supplements. They might spend $100 a month on supplements. I think they would lose a lot of those people. And I think the end result that it would be disastrous for the industry. So, even when you see guys like Lobliner, who philosophically, because, he's a libertarian, philosophically, guys like that who would like to see it, hey, it would make certain parts of their life easier. they'd like to see it, but realistically, I think it would probably cut the profits of the whole industry in half because again, it's people who are on a tighter budget would just opt for the other stuff because no one cares about safety. I mean, if people cared about safety, they wouldn't buy over-the-counter supplements because most of this stuff is not proven safe. The United States has exceptions put into where the supplement industry does not have to prove a product is safe. They only have to pull it after it's proven to be unsafe. They have a special law in place that they manipulated into place with Congress to allow them to do this nonsense. And they don't have the same controls that other industries do as far as safety does, and people forget that. So no one really cares when they're taking supplements. They don't do the research to see if it's actually going to kill them or hurt them in the long term. They don't care. They just put it into their body. So the only reason they take it is because it's over the counter and it's legal. That's literally how a lot of people define what they're willing to take. They don't actually take the time to do real research to see if it actually works, what the safety concerns are, any of that. That's 80% to 90% of people buying supplements. That's honestly the mindset they have. If it's over the counter, it must be okay. Even though that's not how the laws are written in the United States, at least. So I think a lot of those people, they would lose them as customers for the most part, and that would be disastrous for the industry. Be disastrous for the industry. And so they have a vested interest. I think the supplement industry in general has a vested interest in not only continuing to say their fake natties are fake, or that they're real, they're actually natties, they don't want to say they're fake, that their supplements actually work. I think they do have a vested interest in not having this stuff legalized. It would be in their best interest to lobby and spend money to make sure that anabolics don't become legal, even though many executives in supplement companies themselves do abuse large amounts. Alright guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.